several, and some are letters to the editor written by veterinarians, but some are from peer-reviewed veterinary journals.
Okay.
Bernice?
Well, I've been wondering why we've had this topic I've been coming to these meetings for the last 22 years. We've had a range of topics. This is the first time the issue of horses has ever come up, or horse carriages. And one of the things I really wanted to, I was curious because I love this community, and I love horses, and it never occurred to me that somehow horses were being mistreated. It's just, not that I've ever taken a horse carriage ride, or rather ride a horse myself, but the whole issue is, how does it really pertain to what we're trying to do, which is maintain the quality of our community, the quality of life we enjoy here? Was there enough of a complaint, or the people who were complaining that these...
Oh, Bernice, I'll answer that. It was my idea, as I explained in the beginning, because our board reacted fairly in a very lively way to the article written by Dara that appeared in a legal journal last summer. And because there have been signs in people's windows indicating that they are sympathetic with the ban, and because we're at the heart of this business, I thought that this would be an interesting topic for the community. So these are invited guests, so I wouldn't ask them why they're here. Because that's really a decision.
I wanted to ask you first off why, and it's interesting because.
Well, we need a question here. Do we have another one? Someone who has not? Yes, this gentleman back here.
I want to just share a few thoughts and then ask a specific question, and that is, I appreciate both of the speakers here tonight. I think it's important to get both sides of the equation, and it's important that the horses are treated properly. And I think we've made some progress over the years, and I think we need to continue it, particularly since car traffic sometimes can be aggressive, and I think more often than not it's the drivers of the cars that are the problem. And I personally support horse carriages. I think they bring an interesting quality of life to Society Hill. It slows things down a little bit in the neighborhood. I think it's a real asset, and if we can possibly make it work, it would be wonderful. From my heritage, my great-grandfather had over 100 milk wagons in North Philadelphia. And I also have, on another side of my family, horses that were in the mining industry, and they were taken care of very carefully. When you're in a business, a horse is incredibly important. If you take care of it, it's your most important asset. And I'm sure that the carriage companies try to do that, and we do have some laws, and let's see if we can enforce them. My question is this concept of rights for animals. Part of it's dealing with carriages, but you also read out in the newspapers, it's a lot more than that. You're talking about not only carriages, you're talking about mounted horses. Does it mean that we can't even ride a horse? What about other animals? I know there's issues about primates. Do primates have legal rights or responsibilities? I mean, we're sort of touching, the tip of an iceberg here on carriage horses. And I mean, I prefer to have them in the neighborhood if we can keep them. But what is this legal law as far as this concept of animal rights? I'm trained as a biologist. I'm very much pro-animals, environmental issues, everything else. But it really starts making me wonder, what is his legal ramification with animal rights other than not being cruel to an animal? I mean, there's something about being, compelling them not to do something against their will. Well, a dog is a captive animal. A cat is. A horse is. I mean, and I guess my question.
I get the drift of your question, and I think that this question has come up a few times. Is how far does this go with horses, or how far does it go with other animals?
Yeah,
I know you've kind of told us a few times, and the topic is on the carriage horses, but since you're an attorney and in this field of animal rights, I was wondering if you could touch on that.
The law that drafted, that we suggest should be the ban to get rid of the horse carriages, is drafted animal-driven vehicle. So it would prevent any animal from being forced to carry a vehicle in the name of tourism. I mean, that's what it is drafted to define animal as not just horse. If that scares you, that we don't want any animal to be forced to carry a carriage, then your position has been
No,
made
that's the
clear.
tip of the iceberg in that case law, and that's what I'm saying, is it also goes to primates as far as legal rights. I mean, there's different levels of law here that's starting to evolve, and it seems to me that, you know, if the carriage ban goes, you know, then the mounted horses go. It just seems to me, we're talking about carriage horses, but there's this theme underneath this all that is...
Dara, did you have anything more that you wanted to say about
Well,
that?
it's hard for me to understand your concern when we're talking about a city ordinance that just talks about Philadelphia city limits, and it doesn't discuss animals.
Well, I think the
being
topic
anything.
today, though, is not just that, I mean, for us, as the inviters, it wasn't just the ordinance. It really has to do with animal rights, especially vis-a-vis the carriages, but there is this, you know, question of, you know, how far does it extend? I don't know if you want to...
Yeah, I mean, look,
Well, it
I'm
was
an
about the
law
neighborhood.
professor, and I study these laws, and
I thought it was about the
I
neighborhood.
try to be as optimistic as possible, but there's no way we're going to have a law in our lifetimes that's going to give animals rights that you're speaking of.
Okay.
It's just not going to happen.
I'd like to take a couple more questions. I see two people here who have not said anything. This lady back in the red.
I have a question for the Pam's lady for Pam. I have read on your website that you are also opposed to all service animals, including seeing eye dogs.
Did you read that on our website? Because I don't remember it being there.
Yes.
But I don't know what that has to do with the issue here.
Well, it goes back to the same question. You know, if you ban the horse carriages and then, you know, ostensibly, possibly the mounted horses, whether you can or not, does that next go to banning seeing eye dogs too?
About bomb-sniffing dogs.
The law...
Or
again,
bomb-sniffing
that's
dogs, or rescue dogs, or any other animal that works with humans in a beneficial way. Because this is what your organization is about.
As I said, the law that we drafted has to do with animal-driven vehicles. Our organization has not drafted any other laws because we don't see it as fruitful if there's no chance of it getting passed. People in this room have power in passing a ban against horse-drawn carriages. That's why we're here. That's what I'm here to discuss. If you want to bring up other things on our website, we can discuss them afterwards because I'd be happy to discuss with you the vegan diet or other things that, or environmentalism or social justice issues that we care deeply about as a group. But again, I wasn't invited to talk about PAN, although I'd love to come to your next meeting and do so. I was invited to talk about the horse carriages.
How about society?
Can I make a comment?
Yes, please. I'm going to comment from you, Christina, and then this lady in the front.
Yeah, no,
I think it's very telling what you just said, which is that, well, yes, we're for all these things, but we're not going to try and ban seeing eye dogs because we wouldn't get that passed. This is a similar argument that's been made by a lot of the animal rights groups with regards to horses. They've sat there and said, well, we're really opposed to any sort of animal-human interaction that we view as exploitative. And that includes riding horses, that includes the rodeo, that includes horse racing, that includes summer camp, that includes the mounted police, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. The only thing that a horse should do is be a horse, and by this definition, a horse is simply a being that goes around and eats grass and interacts with other horses. I would argue that a horse is more than that. They're being domesticated as one of our partners. But there's been a lot of these groups, like PAN, like PETA, like Friends of Animals, who have specifically said, we're going to target the carriage industry. Why are we going to target the carriage industry? Because they don't have any money. They don't have the money that the American Quarter Horse Association has. They don't have the money that the Rodeo Association has. They don't have the money that the National Thoroughbred Racing Association has. They, in the view of these radical groups, are vulnerable. Why? Because carriage drivers are out there doing their jobs every day. You know, there's a lot of talk in Dara's article and in literature on Hansen's website about the long working hours that horses are forced to work in Philadelphia. Let's be clear about this. The law in Philadelphia is that horses can be in harness no longer than 9 hours. They are not allowed to come out before 9:30 in the morning, and they have to be back headed home by 3:30, which really works on the weekdays, which is 5 hours. From 10 to 3 is really when they're working. On the weekends, they work about 8 hours. And so that's a 31-hour work because the horses all get 2 days off usually a week. Now, as a carriage driver, when I was working, I'd have to show up an hour and 15 minutes before I was going to even leave the barn. Why? Because the horse had to, I had to take care of the carriage first, leave the horse inside so that he could finish his breakfast and just hang out and everything like that. And then the horse had to get brushed, horse had to get harnessed, horse had to get hooked up to the carriage. This all took about an hour and 15 minutes at the end of the day. Reverse process. The horse had to be unharnessed, had to get walked out, cooled out, hosed off if they were hot, brushed out if they weren't, put away, given their hay, given a chance to eat it, not to mention the trip to the water trough as well as making sure the buckets were full and installed and everything like that, so they would always have water, and then fed. And so the horse was working 31 hours a week, and I was working 50. And so when the people that are involved in the carriage industry are working those kinds of hours because they're there because they love the horses, and I bring a wonderful point up that people who work with horses, that is your most valuable asset. It's not in your interest in any way, shape, or form to have your partner be mistreated.
Christina, I'm going to cut you off there and go to this question.
Question.
My question is, how are you going to compensate the companies that have these horses if you ban them all of a sudden? These people have huge investments in all those horses, carriages, et cetera, et cetera.
They also have investments in other tourist arms in the city. 76 Carriage Company is Philly Trolley Tours, so they have the tour buses.
It's not the only company.
And there is another company.
There's two other companies.
Really?
So
Well,
you just take away from
there's
them and
plenty
give
of-
them no money?
I'm sorry?
You just take the horses and the carriages away and not compensate them at all?
Are you asking if my group has
I'm
money to
asking
pay
what your law says.
for them? The law doesn't talk about compensating them. It talks about carrying the horse is the concern in the way we drafted the law and making sure that the horses are somehow
It's just like-
Okay, I'm going to take one last
sorry.
question. I'm sorry.
Well,
Go ahead.
just quickly, I don't know if your interest is in the companies or the drivers.
All of those people are going to be badly hurt by your ordinance.
Well, I think the drivers are at risk now, despite what they say. I mean, if you're concerned about the physical well-being of the drivers, they're at risk driving easily spookable horses. I mean, we've had accidents where drivers have been hospitalized because they're so dangerous. If you're worried about the financial well-being of the drivers, again, these companies that own the horses also own other tour companies. And we have, once we take out the horses, a very exciting tourism industry with other kinds of vehicles coming in and plenty of jobs for the drivers, for people who have that skill set.
Nice.
I'd like to take
Question?
a question from somebody who has not, yes.
Question.
I promised at my opening talk that we would see some of the same rhetoric that the automobile industry used 100 years ago. There was, and it's a completely false notion that, we'll just phase out horses and bring in cars, and the people that were blacksmiths will become tire dealers and mechanics, and the people that built carriages will become car companies, and that was true to a certain degree, but not really. And that people that are veterinarians will somehow, and that didn't happen. Very few of those people had any interest in these newfangled cars. I mean, they're soulless. And the people that are involved in the industry do it because they're very, very passionate about it.
Well, that's very clear, Christina.
Question.
A question from somebody who has not asked a question.
Poignant question, through the finance.
You haven't asked a question yet? Okay, please do.
I lived in the neighborhood probably maybe longer than anybody here. I am so delighted to see the expressions of delight on our visitors, especially children, who ride the carriages. I am delighted that we are giving this special opportunity in this city, which that brings back some of our history. What I would like to see the carriages do and the drivers do is have more training in the history of this neighborhood, and so that when they give their spiels, they are more accurate. So my question, I guess, is what do the carriage companies do to foster a better representation of the actual history of our neighborhood and our city?
And the answer to that is in this room, actually. Brian asked this question earlier about 2 or 3 years ago, 2.5 years ago, when all the brouhaha in the Inquirer caused by Ron Avery and his series of articles where he went around and he rode with carriage drivers, and he rode with duck boats, and he rode, and the whole city ordinance about the tour guides legislation, which is in the news again now. In response to that, Brian and a couple of other independent walking tour guides in Philadelphia got together and they founded the Association of Philadelphia Tour Guides. Before then, Philadelphia did not have a professional tour guide organization.
They sued, right?
Huh?
They sued.
Excuse me?
They filed a lawsuit.
No.
Yeah, well, that was not
That's not us.
the organization.
That's not us.
Somebody else.
That was actually Mike here in the back.
We're supporting him.
That's an entirely other issue, which is, maybe we should have the APT come and talk about tour guiding issue, because not only do you get carriages in your neighborhood, you also get walking tours and ghost tours and things. And so that is something that, carriage drivers have been a part of. It's
we
not.
encourage more training too.
Yeah.
Nobody will agree with you more than a carriage driver or another tour guide.
I know
Sorry.
that some people have to actually deal with meters and so on. If you could wrap it up really quick, and I'm going to break my rule and take this after you wrap it up very quickly.
Very quickly.
One more.
And very quickly, the fact of the matter is that we're working on it, and that's something that is a part of it. I have a master's degree in history. Ron Avery rode in my carriage because he thought he was going to get a bad tour, and he didn't, so he didn't write about it. He had to go take another carriage ride with the guy on his first day at work.
Okay, yes.
There's been a lot of commenting about how easily spookable the draft horses are, and I just wanted to know if anyone has come across a statistic about how many accidents there have been that have not been 100% caused by cars, drunk drivers, whatever, crashing into the carriages themselves and have been actually caused by the horses being spooked.
There are hundreds of accidents, horse carriage accidents. Whether or not there's a statistic for how many have not been caused by
In
the
Philadelphia?
In Philadelphia, I don't think so.
That's correct.
Studies where even, like the sound of an umbrella opening or street musicians playing have caused horses to bolt. So, they're spooked not just by cars whizzing by, but by sudden noises. I mean, the impact and the extent to which they're prey animals, and their instinct is to bolt to avoid any possible danger.
So there's no
isn't
statistics?
emphasized enough.
I would, as somebody who works with horses and has not just read about horses, you're right in that horses are prey animals, and their response when confronted with a threat is generally to bolt. However, carriage horses are highly trained animals. To them, a taxi isn't frightening. They see one every single day. Actually, they see dozens, hundreds of them every single day. A duck boat isn't frightening to them, because they see one all the time. Now, some of us may be frightened, but to the horse, the urban environment is their home. It's normal. Things that if you brought in your horse from out Lancaster County, although the Amish do a very good job of road training their horses, if you brought your horse that was boarded, let's say, someplace in some bitsy fancy riding stable and never left the farm and was confined to this barn and this paddock and never, ever saw a car or a truck or anything like that, yeah, they're going to freak out. But those aren't the horses we're talking about. These are horses.
Okay, I don't know if you have a last word here, Dara?
Yeah, so we're not
Yes.
asking more questions. Okay. You know what, all this, Ms. Hansen mentioned that I don't work with horses every day. That's completely true. I do not. I want you to take out all of what you've heard. Forget about the equine veterinarians. Forget about what Ms. Hansen said as the driver.
Of course.
Go to the streets and look for yourselves. Just observe the horses. Look at them, look at their posture. Look at the way they're standing. Look at their legs. And look at their eyes. What do you see? Think about what you observe there. And think about, look at their tail. It's braided. It can't even swat away flies, which would be another natural behavior that's being denied. Just observe for yourselves what the horses are enduring. And then ask yourselves, is this necessary? I mean, for what? For profit? For our tourist industry, which is booming in all other respects? I mean, why do we have them here? And why are we making them suffer like that? So just look for yourselves. Forget about what we said. Forget about what the readings say. Forget about what all the veterinarians say and all the peer-reviewed journals. Just look for yourselves. You live here. You see it every day. But really look. Thank you.
If you look at the carriage horses in Philadelphia, what will you see? You will see horses that are well fed, that are well groomed. Their tails are braided to keep them out of the diaper bags so that they're not swatting manure and sidewalks and everything like that. We have a thing called fly light and fly spray that the horses are given. So you'll see horses that are standing in the carriage stand. They're standing with their heads at about shoulder level. They're standing with one hind foot cocked. Why is that? Because they're relaxed. That's equine body language. A horse that's frightened is a horse that has its head up in the air, with its eyes bugging out and its ears up, and it looks tense and all ready to move. Now, that's the way a lot of show horses look, because we bred them to look like that because we humans decided that that's pretty. For a horse, that's a horse that's excited, stressed, running on adrenaline. A horse that's relaxed. If you go and you look at some herd of horses out in the field someplace on a hot southern day, standing under the shade of a tree, they're going to be standing like carriage horses, which is with their heads about shoulder level, their ears relaxed, their legs relaxed, just hanging out. So, by all means, please, look at the carriages.
Yeah.
Really see them for what they are.
Right. Bravo, baby. Bravo.
I want to say yes very much for coming, and I do want to say that our association has not taken any position and doesn't intend to, but I've explained my reasons to Bernice that I thought that this is something that people are talking about in our neighborhood, and we could have a reasoned discussion. I think we have. The one thing that I've taken away from it personally is that, especially reading your resumes, these are two people who really care about horses. Obviously, they both do, even though there's not a meeting of the minds on this question. So I appreciate your taking the time to educate us about your positions, and I thank you, the audience, for your very good questions.